cults in popular media tend to hit a few common cliches. White robes, burning at the stake, weird sex rituals.
I love the leader. The leader is perfect.
And while those tropes have their roots in real-life high-control groups, as someone who grew up in a doomsday cult, humble brag, I'm always impressed when a creative work goes for something a little more nuanced, a little more grounded mode. After all, what does a doomsday cult look like when doomsday has already happened?
The whole world ended and you still believe that shit.
I actually started believing after the world ended.
Episode 8 of HBO's The Last of Us features a truly creepy cult that's made all the more frightening because it is believable. So in this video, we're going to look at Season 1 of The Last of Us, David, through the lens of how cult experts define real-life, high-control, high-demand religions. This is Cult Popture, unless that is already the name of a podcast. Please no, God damn it. Okay, this is just a video. Pop cult analysis or something. This video is going to feature spoilers for the first 8 episodes of The Last of Us HBO series, and the first however many hours of the game, so if you're not caught up on the show, just mute it and watch it anyway so I can get some ad revenue. There's this old aphorism that says the difference between a religion and a cult is what happens when you try to leave.
I'm gonna slip out.
You're free to leave whenever you want, but would you mind telling us why?
Oh, I just didn't, I didn't think, it's pretty good.
But it's more than that. Cults are totalist systems defined by control, where reality is dictated by the whims of its leaders. And in The Last of Us, that leader is David. The episode begins with a scripture, Revelation 21, being read by David.
Revelation 21. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth were passed away. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes.
This was one of the scriptures we love to go to as Jehovah's Witnesses, and it is a doomsday staple.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing that.
Great. It's here at Revelation 21, 3 and 4. Susan, would you please read that?
Sure.
The verse seemingly describes a time when Armageddon comes, God wipes away the wicked earth we currently live in, and it's replaced by a nice new godly one. But right off the bat, Last of Us showrunners Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann are showing how scriptures are, by their very nature, interpretive. So here, David is using post hoc interpretation of scripture not just to contextualize the post-apocalypse, but to justify cannibalism.
Teach us to know by whom we're fed. Bless us with Christ, the living bread, the living bread, the living bread.
When you take into consideration the fact that Jesus said, drink of my blood and eat of my flesh, it's not hard to see how a desperate group bound by faith in scripture could justify doing something we would otherwise consider unimaginable.
For what it's worth, this is just deer meat, I swear.
Brian Evanson's thriller Last Days also imagines a cult which becomes obsessed with cutting off flesh in a literal sense. In this novel, a cult is formed around Paul's admonition to cut off one's hand if it leads you to sin, leading to a group where a member's holiness is measured by the amount of body parts they've amputated. When David first meets Ellie, he insists that his church teaches basic Bible stuff.
They chose to follow you. Is this some weird cult thing?
Well, you sort of kind of got me there. I am a preacher, but just pretty standard Bible stuff.
Religious cults often initially present themselves as traditional churches, and groups like Scientology and NXIVM market themselves to new recruits as offering basic secular leadership, lifestyle, or mental health improvements, minimizing the severity of committing to the group.
ESP NXIVM is a methodology that allows people to optimize their behavior.
One tactic of modern cults is to admit to members that they are viewed as a cult by outside members. By acknowledging the perception, they soften the allegation. They appear more rational.
Is this some weird cult thing?
Well, you sort of kind of got me there. I am a preacher.
Hello, and welcome. I'm Nancy Salzman. I'm the president of NXIVM Corporation and Executive Success Programs. If you get involved in a group, what's the word that people usually use to invalidate the group? Cult, right?
When we first meet David, he's positioned in front of this banner.
Take a look at Banner, Michael!
He will provide. Just he. It's not clear whether the sign refers to God or David, but by positioning himself in front of it, David is inviting the conflation. This is perhaps the defining feature of a religious cult. The leader and God are inseparable, and a member cannot question one without the other.
I love the leader. The leader is perfect.
Within Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, members will frequently be reminded that a personal belief in God is not enough. The difference between acceptance and excommunication is believing that the governing body, whom witnesses call the faithful and discreet slave, it's a long story, are being led by God himself.
This is not to say that the slave is perfect and never makes mistakes, but Jehovah and Jesus trust the imperfect slave who cares for things to the best of his ability and with the best of motives.
Shouldn't we then trust the imperfect slave as well?
David does this to his members all the time. When leaving the morning service, he confronts his right-hand man, James, on what he perceives as doubts within the congregation.
I sense doubt in there.
They haven't lost faith in you, David. They're just scared.
Not from them.
I still believe.
Despite being the leader of a Christian movement, David is not concerned about the group's doubt in God. It's all about him. It's clear that David operates within a privileged position within the group. Even though his followers are starving, David gets bigger portions. He alone gets to accept new members.
About the girl. We bring her back with us. I don't mean to question your sense of mercy, David. We can let her go. We bring that girl back with us. She's just another mouth to feed. If we leave her out here, she'll die. Yeah, maybe that's God's will.
He gets to determine who lives and dies. The fact that David eats like a king while the rest get scraps is reminiscent of how cult leaders often live and eat for free, with accommodations and meals provided by their subordinates. Members are expected to give money and free labor, and yet despite obviously being the leader and constantly exerting his dominance as the leader, David is really concerned with trying to give the impression that he's no different from the rest of the group.
Last 6 months have been hard.
For all of us.
See? It's been hard for everyone. And when talking to Ellie, he makes it clear that the group chose him and treats it as if it's a great burden that he'd prefer not to have.
I'm a decent man, just trying to take care of the people who rely on me.
You're their leader?
Wasn't my choice. It was theirs, but yes.
So why is David an appealing leader? In the Behind the Scenes podcast, Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann give us some insight.
But he's also extremely confident at adversity. Like, that's why I think he makes the hard calls, just like Kathleen, just like Marlene. There's like a lot of the people we've seen in this story, he can make the hard calls that no one else can make. Doesn't help that he's a narcissist and everything is about him and the love that he receives. And
well, this is, the people that tend to end up running theocracies are probably not as godly as they think.
I love this observation. David is confident in the face of adversity. He appears to be the guy who's able to make the hard decisions. But as we see throughout the episode, this doesn't come from a place of morality or decency. He's able to do this because he's a narcissist. He's able to make hard decisions because he doesn't view the members as people. He views them as sheep.
I'm a shepherd surrounded by sheep, and all I want is an equal.
The theme for this program is, as Jehovah's sheep, reject the voice of strangers.
Dr. Stephen Hassan, a former cult member himself, coined the BITE model, which describes cult brainwashing by means of systematic behavioral, informational, thought, and emotional control. And throughout this episode, David is biting more than human flesh. Fuck, I wrote that line, and now I said that line, and we see David's behavioral and emotional control with public shaming and physical violence.
And we'll bring that man to justice.
You should kill him. You should kill both of them.
And know what he does in this scene. He doesn't take responsibility for the crazy thing that he's doing. He points to this other person like, hey, get your daughter under control. And if this seems like an over-the-top, unrealistic control mechanism for a cult leader, here's former Scientology higher-up Mike Rinder talking about his experience with David Miscavige.
What is the different style of leadership with Miscavige versus L. Ron Hubbard?
Miscavige doesn't really have any redeeming qualities in that
he has a very, very aggressive style and a tendency to violent outbursts that are physical in nature. People say, oh yes, Miscavige is a fool. He is no fool. People who interview me, they're like, well, he's just crazy. Well, crazy like a fox or whatever.
Emotional control is also at the center of David's plea to Ellie. Let's look at some hallmarks Hassan provides for emotional control as the scene unfolds.
You can't survive on your own. No one can. But I can help you. Let me protect you.
I'm not on my own.
Right, your friend. And how is he? I can see how much you care about him, so I know it hurts. But even so, you gotta face reality. That part of your life, it's ending. And what I'm offering you is a beginning. You don't believe that. I don't think your friend would either. Didn't he take another man's life to save yours?
He was defending himself.
He was defending you. You see a lot. So do I. And you know what I see when I look at you? Me. You remind me of me. You're a natural leader. You're smart, loyal, violent.
You don't know anything about me.
But I do. If I let you out of that cage right now, put that knife of yours in your hand, you'd stick me in a second. You have a violent heart, and I should know. I've always had a violent heart.
Now, obviously, a lot of informational control is taken care of by the apocalypse itself. David doesn't have to worry about anyone Googling anything, but David uses code and groupspeak to privilege certain members with more information than others, with those higher in the hierarchy given a sense of privilege. I said privilege too many times there.
Why are you telling me all of this?
Because you can handle it. The way the others can't.
Scientology, NXIVM, and Jehovah's Witnesses all give members more information the higher they get in the group. And counterintuitively, this helps ensure members don't feel like they're being brainwashed. They feel like they're gaining more knowledge the more they commit themselves to the group. In David's cult, not everyone knows about the cannibalism of it all.
What is it?
Venison.
Veal and rabbit are code words for human flesh, but only a select few are taught what these code words mean. They use InSpeak so much that David at one point has to clarify that he isn't using code.
All right, go talk to Howard. He's got a case with some penicillin. Bring back 2 bottles and a syringe. It's not code, James. Do as I said.
Taking the members to the point of cannibalism also plays into a huge motivation as to why cult members stay in. The sunk cost fallacy. How could someone like James turn his back on David knowing the lengths he's gone to defend him? Leon Festinger's seminal social psychology work, When Prophecy Fails, examined a UFO cult who believe they've discovered the day of the end of the world. But when the day came and went without Armageddon, this only made members more committed to the group. They interpreted it as the aliens had simply spared their lives. This is why 4 generations of my family have committed to Jehovah's Witnesses. The end didn't come in 1914, 1925, 1975, 2000, the height of the COVID pandemic, but the more you've committed, the more you've given or given up, the more of your family who've died in behalf of the group, the more of your own children you've shunned because they've left the group, the more people you've, eaten, the more your brain tells you you've invested so much in this, you can't leave now. But the key reason why people like David are able to manipulate people is that cult leaders devise an epistemology wherein they can never be wrong. When one of his members starts crying in fear, David reverts to scripture, ensuring that God promises that if we just have faith, he'll help us. The lack of provisions is not a valid reason to doubt David. And when David successfully provides for the group, he uses this as evidence of God's favor. So whether David provides for the group or not, the members have no excuse to doubt him. What I love about David's demise, other than the dramatic irony of him being chopped up into tiny little pieces...
You're gonna chop me up into little pieces.
How did you put it? Tiny little pieces?
is the fact that he goes out, like all cult leaders, subsumed by belief in his own delusions.
So, how did you do it? What's the secret? Or are you just that fucking special? No one likes being humiliated, Ellie. You don't know how good I am! You don't know what I could have given you!
You can see a moment here where David realizes the logical thing to do would be to leave the building, lock the door, and let Ellie die in the fire. But he can't. He's been humiliated. His divine specialness has been challenged, and he needs Ellie to know how special he really is. He may be manipulating the group, but he has also manipulated himself. And he goes out with the fundamental toxicity of all cults, conflating fear and love.
There's no fear in love.
What I like about The Last of Us, though, is that it's not totally cynical about religion. It provides a counterpoint. Now, I am cynical about religion, so I like that Craig and Neil are more nuanced than myself. The egalitarian town of Jackson has a church, and the writers make sure to mention that it's not a controlling environment.
House of worship, multi-faith.
So, I don't know. I guess that's the point of the video. Jackson is good, and they're communists, so be a comrade and like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you'd like me to do more of these in the future. I would like to talk about Last of Us 2. It's one of my favorite cult stories, or at least it features one of my favorite cult stories, but now I'm kind of wondering if I should wait for the TV show to tackle it first and the inevitable season 2. So sound off in the comments. And don't be a David. Don't eat people. Don't kill people.